Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Categorically Romance podcast. My name is Bree, and I am so excited. Today, I have author Trish Milburn joining us for the first time. So welcome to the podcast, Trish. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I've been writing for quite some time. I started actually writing my first manuscript when I was still in college. That's one of those that will forever stay like not published because it was not very good. um, but continued on as I worked as a journalist for a number of years, and I still freelance write for the magazine that I used to work for. But as we were talking before the podcast started, I'm a Kentucky girl. I grew up in Kentucky, went to college here. Then my husband and I moved to Nashville for about 20 years, and then Florida for 6 years. And then we ended up back in Kentucky like a couple of years ago.
Did you move back to like your same hometown or?
No, neither of us had lived here, but this is where my father-in-law, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law live now. So we came to be closer to his dad as, he's getting older. So.
I have to say, I adore your website because it's just gorgeous to look at, but also like you share so much about yourself, which as a podcaster, I'm always like, yours is perfect. So thank you for giving me so much. Like anybody that's new to you, it's like your website is just, I think if you're new to building a website about yourself, go look at Trish's. That's what I will say. So on it, you call yourself one part author and one part fangirl. So what's one of the earliest things you remember fangirling about?
That's pretty easy. It's Duran Duran.
Okay.
I love Duran Duran back, in the heyday of, I really liked their music and kind of their whole stage presence. And I never got to see them live, but I really liked them. So yeah, that was probably one of the earliest things. That and Harrison Ford. Until I realized that he was the same age as my mom.
What's your Duran Duran song of choice? Like, I love Come Undone.
Oh, wow. That's a hard question. I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many good ones.
There's so many. Yeah. I have some get to know you questions. So first thing that kind of comes to mind, which is going to be interesting because you are someone that seems to really love things. So tell us two of your favorite things.
Favorite things. Say, as you could probably tell from my website, there's K-pop and K-drama.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to group them into one because there's a lot of overlap between the two. I discovered both of them in 2018, and I just fell in love. I love the music; it makes me happy. There's a lot of great stories in K-dramas, and for those who don't know, this is Korean pop music and Korean dramas, which have just kind of exploded in popularity in the last few years.
Yeah.
And then totally different from that is national parks. I love visiting national parks, whether they are the ones that focus on history or nature or some combination of the two. I just really like those. My sister worked in Yellowstone for a while, and so that's kind of, I liked parks before, but when she worked there back in the 90s, I visited and I was just like, oh, this is really cool.
That is on my like life bucket list to see. So to know that your sister
Gorgeous.
worked there and you were able to go, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
oh gosh. Okay, who is one of your most read authors?
Okay, this is an interesting question. Is probably if I'm talking about pure numbers. In romance, it's probably my best friend, MJ Frederick. She's also an author. So I've read a bunch of hers. But probably as far as like people I don't know author-wise, it's actually two mystery series authors that I've just kind of really glommed to their series a number of years ago. And one is Nevada Barr. She is a former National Park Ranger, and all of her Anna Pigeon mystery series is set in national parks. And that character, Anna Pigeon, is a National Park Ranger. And so it kind of, we've got Lake Superior and the Natchez Trace Parkway, Liberty Island, just all over the place. And then the other one is Dana Stabenow. She's an Alaska author and who has the Kate Shugak series. It's a really interesting character, but also a really cool sort of look into what it's like to live in Alaska, to be a native there,
Hmm.
to what it's like to live in the bush.
Well, if you came with a warning label, what would it say?
May steal your brownies.
I mean, if you're going to
I,
steal anything, it should be treats. So
yeah.
I'm so fascinated by your love of like the Asian dramas and then of course the K-pop. So if somebody is completely new to that world, drama-wise, something to watch on screen, what is like one that you would point them to go watch?
I would say Crash Landing on You. It's easily accessible because it's on Netflix, and it's just a great romance. Kind of a opposites attract because you've got a woman who is South Korean. And she's part of this conglomerate family. They're very wealthy, and she's a kind of a CEO, and she goes hang gliding one day and gets caught in a storm and gets blown into North Korea.
Oh my
Where
gosh.
yeah. And I mean, you have to suspend disbelief, but it's so she meets a North Korean soldier, and through hijinks and hiding her and everything, they fall in love. And what's really cool about this story is that the actor Hyun Bin and the actress Sun Ye Jin, they actually fell in love, got
In
married,
real
and now they have a
life.
baby.
I love that. So you touched a little bit on when, like, I think you said it was like 2018 when you discovered your love of both the dramas and the K-pop. Like, what is it? Do you remember like what song you heard first, or like just that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm really into this? Because it did. I feel like it just came out of nowhere and took the world by storm and blew up.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it got very popular worldwide because of the success of BTS. And something that frustrates me as a former, still sort of journalist, is that so much of the reporting in the West, it's like that's all they cover. But there's so many awesome groups, both boy groups and girl groups, that have such an interesting array of music. Everything from just pure pop to like K hip hop, K rock, kind of mixtures of all that. It's just lots of really cool music to choose from. But yeah, probably I actually came to K-pop from K-drama. I had Netflix had suggested I watch something, and that led to something else. And I was watching a drama called Scarlet Heart Rio, and there was a soundtrack song. And I've always really loved soundtrack music, but this one was a really cool song, and I was like, who is this? I love this song. And it was by a subunit of a group called EXO, which they're very big in Korea. Um, and that led me into K-pop, and it was just like they say, it's down the rabbit hole from there.
Well, we talked a little bit about your like the list of places that you've been, which listeners, I will have links, of course, to Trish's website. You have to go look at this list of her favorite places. Out of that list, which do you think like imprinted on you the most? Was it Yellowstone?
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, I really love Disney World as like you kind of walk in there and it's like the real world goes away for a while. But Yellowstone is just so beautiful, and the landscape is unlike anywhere else because you've got all these thermal features, with the geysers and the mud pots and the all kinds of fumaroles and all this kind of stuff. And then you just got beautiful mountain landscapes, lovely rivers, lots of wildlife. I mean, where else can you go stand on a hillside and see a herd of bison or a herd of elk, just as far as you can see? And yeah, the first time I went there was in the 90s when my sister worked there, but I think I've been there 4 times now. So.
Wow. Well, we love hearing romance origin stories. So, would you share with us how you became a romance reader?
A reader. Oh, wow. That was probably when I was in high school. One of my friend's mom had a stash of romance novels, and I would read them when I went to visit her. And then when I was in college, there was a used bookstore right next to campus. And so when I wasn't studying, I would go in there and get the used books and just kind of fly through those. And that's probably a familiar story for a lot of people.
Well, I read and you shared a little bit that you started writing romance in the 90s.
Hmm.
And on your website, you wrote that it took you 11 years to sell your first book. So looking
It did.
back, do you remember what kept you motivated to keep trying in that 11 years?
I'm stubborn.
That'll do it.
uh, Yeah, I won't say that it was always easy because there was a lot of tears in the mail. You open the mailbox and there was the rejection letter, and you're like, ah. And there was a point at the 10-year mark where I considered quitting. I was still working full time at that point. I call it my summer of Buffy because I was just kind of down and just like, okay, maybe this isn't going to happen. So I basically laid on my couch that summer and watched all 7 seasons of Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, all 5 seasons of Angel, and the first season of Supernatural. But then somewhere in the middle of all that TV watching, I got an idea for a YA, a paranormal YA. I have always liked paranormal stories. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try this and see what happens, and then I'll make the decision after that. So I wrote this book that was about kind of like, well, I call it like Witches meets the Sopranos. So that book became 3 books, and they were the Coven series that I did. And those were the first books that I sold.
Mhm.
And I sold them to Razorbill, which is part of Penguin.
Okay.
And then 3 months later, I sold to Harlequin American. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this thing.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a series before. Okay. So I saw online, it was 2008. You released A Firefighter in the Family, and that's with
Right.
the American Romance line.
Hmm.
Okay. Oh, cool. Okay. So having written for that line and now writing for Heartwarming, how would you kind of compare and contrast the two? Like, do they feel similar or no?
There is a lot of similarities in that they typically take place in small town America. They're very sort of like, well, heartwarming is the right word. But American, you could have some sex in those, and heartwarming you can't. Not even closed door, which is totally cool with me. And I just sort of, I think I'm at the place in my writing where that is appealing to me. But and because of that, you focus more on just sort of the pure building of the romance, but and the kind of like from the initial meeting to first sort of like, maybe this person's kind of interesting, to attraction. You're building on the emotional aspects of the relationship, and then you also there's a word count difference. Americans were about 55,000, and heartwarmings are 70. So
Yeah.
there's
So
more
yeah.
room there to kind of explore like some secondary characters and how the hero and heroine relate to them and to the community that they're part of, that kind of thing.
So did you know like when you like transitioned from American Romance was Heartwarming like the line that you knew you wanted to do?
Actually, for a while, I thought I was just kind of done with Harlequin because the American line closed and Nocturne line closed.
Yes, you wrote for
Yeah,
Nocturne too, which
yeah,
I
one book.
love Nocturne.
Yeah, both of those lines closed. So I was like, well, okay. And that's when self-publishing was becoming more viable. It was no longer just you paid somebody to print your book. It was, through Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And it's like it was viable now. And it was, the money coming in instead of the money going out. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to do that now because it was like exploding and people were, doing well. But then Harlequin actually came to me and asked if I wanted to write for Heartwarming. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll give this a whirl.
Well, Heartwarming was my introduction to Harlequin. So, creatively for you, what have you been enjoying about writing romances for this line?
uh, I think it's kind of the same thing about how it's different from American. It's like I like being able to. A lot of people write and do it well, focusing just purely on the hero and heroine. I like to write about that plus their relationship with, family and friends and the community at large, kind of having a bigger picture of this world that they live in. I like I like writing quirky secondary characters and how they can bring some humor to the story because as a rule, I wouldn't say I'm a humorous writer. My friend Tanya Michaels is a super humorous writer. And so I'm kind of jealous of her, just the ease with which she does that. But mine doesn't tend to be that way. So these secondary characters can bring in some humor, whereas the main story may be very tense or oh no, what's going to happen
Mhm.
next, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that is so important. Like the people in our lives really kind of, they are important in like shaping who we are.
Hmm.
So I love that about Heartwarming is that you do get the chance to kind of see their community, because I
Right.
think if you're going to love somebody, sometimes those people are part of the package too. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, and they can influence the relationships, either positively or negatively.
Mhm. Well, your upcoming July release is The Heart of a Rancher, which is
Hmm.
Jade Valley, Wyoming, book 4. Can you tell us what it's about?
Yeah, it's the first of what I hope is going to be like 3 books about these 3 sisters. And the first one in this book is Ivy Lake. That's her name, and she is like me, originally from Kentucky. And the book opens where she's in a relationship, but I won't spoil it. But things go awry, and she enters a contest on a whim to win a historic building in Wyoming, and she wins. And that's how she ends up in Jade Valley. And it's one of those where she gets there, the building's not quite what she thought it was going to be, so she needs help fixing it up. And so you have the hot rancher who also needs some extra work, and so he comes to help her fix up her building, and and then love blooms.
Love Blooms.
Yeah.
Well, I think like I was reading about the book and I was like, oh man, anytime I have like renovation and romance, that it's just such a fun
Hmm.
combination. So, did you have a favorite scene writing wise, or now that it's done and it's about to come out, that you're like, oh, I really hope readers enjoy this particular scene because you had such a good time writing it?
Yeah, there are a couple of but one where the hero and heroine and his mother and younger sister, they all go to this sort of, it's kind of like a junk store slash, those places in the country where, they've just collected a million things and you just kind of go through it and see what you want. It's kind of that. So I'm a thrifter. I enjoy going thrifting and try to find vintage things and that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed writing that scene because it's a combination of kind of what the interesting things they find as they walk through this place, and then the relationship is building very much at this point, and so there's like little romantic moments as this happens too, and it's an interesting turning point for the hero's mom too. She's been through some things, and part of the story is bringing her out of kind of a dark place she's at the beginning. So that's part of that aspect where I like writing about the characters that are also part of the world. So
Well, can you tell us any behind the scenes details of writing it? Like any music you listened to, movies you had to turn on, phone a friend moments?
I don't tend to listen to music when I'm writing. I'm kind of one of those who needs it to be quiet. And if I do listen to anything, it doesn't have words.
Okay.
Uh, but as far as like this is more like kind of behind the scenes for the series as a whole. Jade Valley, like I've been to Wyoming several times. Of course, Yellowstone is there, the Tetons, Jackson Hole. Just kind of it's very different from one side of the state of Wyoming to the other. Same with Montana. But I kind of set Jade Valley, of course, is a fictional town, but it's situated about halfway in between Jackson, Wyoming, and the Wind River Indian Reservation. And actually, the heroine in book 3 is she grew up on the reservation. She's Shoshone, and she's the county sheriff for this place. So yeah, I've driven through that area before, so I have like an interesting visual in my head of what this valley looks like. like this green valley in between two mountain ranges, so with a river running through it. So
I mean, you said you're hoping this is the first in like another kind of series, keeping the series going, but following, new characters.
right. Hmm.
Are you working on any of those books now?
I'm working on the proposal for the second sister's book. We've kind of gone back and forth a little bit on that. So that'll be something I'm working on this upcoming week.
Okay. And where can everyone follow you online?
Well, my website that you mentioned is just trishmilburn.com, and it has like links to all my social media. I'm probably, I bebop around on Facebook a bit. I'm probably most active on Twitter. I do have a woefully underutilized YouTube channel. I need to
Same.
like put more. I need to put more content on there, but it's like there are only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like YouTube is kind of like the platform that is here to stay and is probably
Yeah.
the smartest one for all of us to use, but
Hmm.
that involves like kind of having on real clothes. I don't know.
Yeah,
Just
well,
like I don't.
and the time that goes into editing, and
Yes.
and if you're not like a professional editor or whatever, it's like, okay, you have to, okay, how do I do this again? And for a while, I didn't do it because we had like super slow internet, but we just recently got fiber, so it's like, oh look, internet that actually works.
Well, I hope you give it a try, Trish. I will
Yeah.
definitely subscribe to you on YouTube.
Thanks.
So.